Today, we're going to start a brand new unit on tort law, which is also known as civil law. Throughout this course and throughout the semester, we have spent quite a bit of time discussing and doing lessons on criminal law. We had a wonderful mock trial, which was a criminal law case. But for the rest of the semester, we're going to focus on tort law, again, which is also known as civil law. Some things that I need you to keep in mind as we go through the rest of the course and do our discussions, our lessons on tort law and civil law. Please bring your textbook to class every single day because we will be using it on a daily basis. Also, take real good notes from the lessons that we will be going through in the class because there will be a quiz as it relates to tort law or civil law when we finish the unit. And I know we all are going to do an excellent job as you guys have already been doing throughout the course. So let's first start our lesson today by defining what is tort law. So in criminal law, when a wrongdoing is committed, we call it a crime. In civil law, when a wrongdoing is committed, we call it a tort. Let's kind of refresh our memory and go back to Unit 1 when we first started this great law course. Remember, in civil cases, the plaintiff is the person who has been harmed, and they are seeking some type of judgment. The defendant is the person accused of doing the wrongdoing. The punishments in civil law cases are quite different from the punishments in a criminal law case. So, in a civil law case, there is no jail time. So, if the defendant is ordered to compensate the plaintiff, he can compensate the plaintiff one or two ways. Many times it's through monetary payment for the damage that has been done, and many times it's also through what is known as a remedy. What do I mean by remedy? Remedy is something to make up for the harm that was done. So remember this, that when it comes to punishments in civil law cases, there is no jail time served. The person can be compensated one or two ways. It could be through monetary payment that you have to pay for the damages that have been done, or it can be through what is known as a remedy, something to make up for the harm that was done. That kind of person be tried in a criminal law court, a court of law, and also a civil court of law? And the answer is yes. If we go back to the O.J. Simpson case, the video that we watched, remember that O.J. was tried in the criminal law courtroom for murder, and he was found not guilty. But then the Goldman family came back and they sued him in a civil case for wrongful death, where he was found guilty of wrongful death. And yes, he had to pay some type of monetary compensation for the death of their son, Ron Goldman. So you can be tried in both a criminal court of law and you can also be tried in a civil court of law. And that's exactly what happened in the O.J. Simpson case. So he was found not guilty in the criminal court of law, but then the Goldman family, they came back and they sued him in the civil court of law, and he was found guilty of wrongful death, and he was ordered to pay monetary compensation for the death of their son. Liability is very important when it comes to civil law cases and tort law. So tort law deals with two questions. Who should be liable or responsible for the harm caused? So that's question number one. The second question is, how much should be paid in damages, or what should the remedy be? So that's important when it comes to who is liable for the harm, who is liable for the injury that the person has sustained. And then number two, how much should be paid in damages, how much money should be paid, or what type of remedy should be given to the plaintiff as far as making up for the harm that was done. We also have what is known as the standard of care. So the law establishes what is known as the standard of care. And the standard of care simply means that it requires us to act with reasonable care towards people and their property. So I just kind of go over that one more time. So the standard of care, and this is a definition that you will need to know for the quiz, requires us to act with reasonable care toward people and their property. If someone is injured, if someone is harmed, then someone must bear the cost of the harm. A good example would be a person that sustains like broken bones through some type of injury and it wasn't their fault. Then someone has to pay the medical bills for that person. Another good example would be a person that was harmed some kind of way or they sustained some type of injury and they're hospitalized. Well, if they're hospitalized, that means they're going to lose wages, they're going to miss work, they're going to lose income and earnings, and someone has to make up for that loss. So, tort law is concerned with who is liable and who must pay damages or who must pay for the law. Judges and juries decide if someone acted unreasonably, causing the harm. That's up to the judge to decide, and that's up to the jury to decide. Many times, the people, unreasonable things can be done on purpose, or many times they're done just through careless acts. The importance of liability is someone liable every time a person gets injured? That's the question that we're asking, and I'm sure as you're listening to this video, that no, because many times people can be blamed for their own injuries. Many times it is an accident, but it's up to the judge, it's up to the jury to decide if that person should be compensated for what was done or who is liable for the harm or who is liable for the injury. Torts compensate people for harms that were foreseeable and preventable. If so, if they were torts compensate people for harms that were foreseeable and preventable. If so, no remedy exists. Here's what I want you to do. If you would grab your textbooks at this point, and I'm going to ask you to please turn to page number 216. I'm going to ask you to look at problem 18.1. And this is an assignment that you have to have completed by the end of the class today. So at this point, you can pause the video, you can grab your textbook, and I want you to read problem 18.1. I'll read the description of each case. Each case involves an injury. Assume that a civil suit is brought by the injured person for each case. So you have two things to do. Number one, identify the plaintiff and the defendant or defendants in each case. And the second thing you must do is determine whether the defendant should pay the plaintiff's damages. And then you must explain your answer. I put on Google Classroom a document for you to fill in this information. And when you have completed it, you can just turn it in on Google Classroom. And then I want you to go back to the video because I have about 2 more slides that I would like you to look at. And then this should close out the rest of our class work today. Welcome back. How damages covered and what are some considerations? Well, damages are covered through what are known as settlements. 90% of tort cases filed in court are settled outside of the courtroom. That's kind of staggering to me. I didn't realize that so many of those cases were settled outside of court, but so only about 10% of lawsuits and civil cases actually make it into the courtroom. The lawyers, they use common law and statutes to convince a judge or jury that a person is deserving of compensation. The standard of proof, and this is really important, and I want you to put down this definition, is called the preponderance of evidence. So let me just say that one more time. It's called the preponderance of evidence. And that simply means that 50% of the weight of the evidence must be in the plaintiff's favor. So in a criminal case, remember, you have to prove without a reasonable doubt. So is a much higher standard in a criminal case. But in a civil case, only 50% of the weight of the evidence must be in the plaintiff's favor. If it's 50% of the evidence weighs in the plaintiff's favor, then guess what? They win the case. So that's quite different than a criminal case where you must prove the person is guilty. Um, the burden of proof is guilty without a reasonable doubt. So this will end our lesson for today. I hope you got your assignment done on 18.1. And tomorrow we will do part 2 on civil lawsuits and tort law. Have a great rest of the day.